The next question is from Tom. Tom says that he's been loving the podcast so far. He's been implementing the nutritional guidelines and is feeling a lot more energized. Unfortunately, the fruit is giving him some erosion on his teeth, and he asked for us to talk about oral health in regard to calcium metabolism, repairing cavities, what nutrients are supportive of oral health. Is it as simple as eating more dairy, vitamin K2, and vitamin D, or just increasing the metabolism? And this is a very large topic. We're not going to talk everything oral health and dental health. There's a ton to dig into now, or to dig into as far as that goes. So we'll keep it rather surface level and just talk about some of the basics here and try to keep it more on the recommendation side, or things to consider as far as the actual application for trying to avoid issues there, or support dental health and oral health, because these are, this is a relatively common question that I'll get. I mean, I've gotten it several times, and it's also just a general concern from the mainstream when you talk about eating sugar containing foods, or, and that includes fruits and juices and all of that. So there's, I guess we can talk through it.
We'll do a series on it at some point.
Definitely. Yeah.
It's worth a series. There's a lot to go over.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And so for now, I guess we'll just kind of go through a few points. So one thing I would mention, he had asked about calcium, and of course our teeth are bones, and as such, they have calcium requirements. They have other mineral requirements as well, as far as magnesium, particularly, also potassium. And with that, he also mentioned vitamin K2 and vitamin D. And both of those are involved in our calcium metabolism and help to make sure that we are using that calcium well and it's getting deposited into bones as opposed to being removed from the bones. So from that standpoint, yes, I would say it's definitely important to make sure you're getting enough calcium and other minerals. And I would say it's also important to be getting enough vitamin K2 and vitamin D. From the K2 side, dairy is a relatively good source. Also, bacteria in our guts could potentially be producing some amount of K2, and vitamin D, of course, from the sun. Is there anything you want to add as far as that side goes?
I mean, yeah, it's your basic fat soluble vitamins.
Yeah. I would definitely add the other fat soluble vitamins in there too. The vitamin A and vitamin E would be helpful.
Yeah, I think that I think there's like a kind of an interplay, right? Because your bones and your teeth aren't just like inert calcium. They're calcium embedded in collagen bones. And I think part of your dentin is like a collagenous, has some collagen structure and whatnot. So it's like collagen with the minerals. So that would require, like having the collagen, if you digest it well, like a collagen hydrolysate to provide that glycine, hydroxyproline, proline, lysine, and I think hydroxylysine, which are like prime components of collagen. And then having the adequate vitamin C and copper, which are cofactors for collagen production. And then having the vitamin D and the vitamin K, which allow you to basically, the vitamin D increases the calcium absorption, and then vitamin K helps you basically take that calcium and move it into the places that you want to move it, whether that's the bones or the teeth, and keep it out of your like calcifying your vasculature. So that's all super helpful. And then the enamel itself, I think, has a high amount of magnesium in it. It has like a special use for magnesium in its structure. So obviously getting enough magnesium. So it's kind of like have a nutrient dense diet, I would say, is the first point. And then the specific focus on vitamins K, vitamin D, vitamin A to some extent, which works together with vitamin D. And then also your vitamin C, your magnesium, which you would want to have. Magnesium is involved in like quite a few processes with vitamin D, vitamin A, vitamin K. And then vitamin A has like a lot of zinc dependent. So it's like have a nutrient dense diet overall, make sure, plug your stuff into Chronometer, make sure that you're hitting your daily targets as far as your nutrients. And I mean, not the Chronometer targets, right? Because the Chronometer target for vitamin C is pathetically low, which is based on, I think, the RDA. If I remember correctly, I think it's like 60 milligrams, or did they just move it to like 120 milligrams?
I don't know if they moved it. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's like a quite low RDA. Like I try to shoot for at least a gram coming from my diet, and that's from fruits and juices and stuff, which it seems like you're already moving that direction. And then I would supplement with things that you may be missing. So for me, since I don't eat dairy, I'm missing calcium. So I supplement, as we just talked about, with that coral calcium, and then magnesium to keep the balance. And yeah, so there's a whole bunch of like basically make sure that your nutrients are on point first. I think that's the first point to hit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. The next piece I would mention there is the microbial side. So we talked a ton. We would talk about the impact of gut health and the microbial balance that we want to have to make sure that we're not producing a lot of endotoxin, for example. And this all directly applies to oral health, where we have a microbiome in our mouths and on our teeth. And when that gets off balance, it does allow for pathogenic bacteria to come in that can actually drive teeth erosion and decay. And there's very specific microbes that are considered there. Specifically, the Streptococcus mutans is known as the primary driver of dental decay. And so, again, big picture wise, doing the general things to support a healthy microbiome is very important and will help to protect against that. And that's why a lot of oral health based things that are supposed to prevent dental decay have antimicrobial effects. And this includes various mouthwashes that might have essential oils, or sometimes they use pharmaceutical compounds that are antimicrobial, which I would favor, some of the more essential oil based ones. Beyond just the general things to support your microbiome. So that would be something to consider as well.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of the fruit polyphenols have actually shown to have some benefit as far as like altering the oral microbiome. So I'm less inclined to think that, and especially in my own personal experience, that the fruit juice itself, like just by itself, is causing the issue as far as like erosion of the teeth. Now, a lot of fruits can have a lot of acids. So my solution with this type of stuff is generally to have my fruit juice and the whole fruit and the dried fruit that I'm going to eat, to have it with an actual meal, so that I'm eating the fruit and I'm having the juice, and then I'll have my calcium carbonate in there, like my coral calcium, like we talked about, maybe some magnesium, and then maybe some B vitamins in that smoothie. And then I'll wait the fit like 10, 15, 20 minutes. And then I'll have my meal, which will have my protein and my vegetables and my fat. So that, for me, for an example, for anybody, this could look like, 12 ounces of juice split between pomegranate and pineapple with some guava and then a calcium carbonate in there. And I'll make a smoothie out of that, maybe throw some B vitamins. Then I'll wait the 10 to 15 minutes, and then I'll have 4 ounces of steak. I'll have, two ounces of broccoli, 3 ounces of carrots, and then I'll have 10 grams of macadamia oil and on my vegetables with some salt, and maybe I'll have some ketchup on the side because I'm still full. And then like that'll be how I situate the meal. It's like I taking in all the sugar and all the carbohydrate and the acid and whatnot, but then afterwards, like I'm eating the vegetables and the protein and whatnot. And I haven't found that to like cause any issues with my teeth at all, especially considering I eat like maybe 400 grams of sugar a day on average, 350 to 400, or between 300 and 400, somewhere in there, depending on my workouts, or, it fluctuates. But essentially I haven't found any issue with, with doing that for my teeth. Now, when I first came to Pete, and I think this happened to both of us, we were living together when this happened, we actually got pretty bad tooth erosion to start. And
yeah, gum erosion rather than teeth, right?
yeah, it was like
Gum recession.
gum erosion. Yeah, gum recession, but I definitely had some tooth erosion as well, because after that happened, like part of my teeth actually remineralized, and you can see where they remineralized, because where they remineralized, there's like a little, like there's like, you can see like around the edge, around like right around, I guess, the arch of the tooth, you can see like a brownish area, and that's actually from the remineralization. And whereas before, like it was out and it was very sensitive, so that happened. I still drank fruit juice throughout the entire period of time. What I adjusted was I wasn't sipping juice all day long. And at that point, when we were having, is also drinking milk. And since I don't tolerate milk well, it could have been a negative effect on my microbiome as well, because the allergenic response to my body and inflammation in my intestine, like damaging my body's ability to regulate my own microbiome with the dairy. So for me, like once I stopped drinking milk, and the other thing, I was using a ton of granulated sugar. Like I was adding granulated sugar to the milk, and in a because I saw Danny Roddy's video doing that, so I was like, oh, that's a great way to get carbs. But I was doing that, and I was having the juice, and I was sipping them throughout the day. So I was like constantly like influxing the fruit juice and the sugar and the milk, like is like mainlining it all day long. And so that's when I was having my worst tooth erosion. When I went to just having 4 solid meals a day, how I just previously described, I stopped getting tooth erosion. My teeth stopped being sensitive, but I still continued to eat 300, 400 grams of sugar a day. It just like was at the meal, and then I didn't snack in between. And we've talked about this before with the 3-hour gap with the migrating motor complex and all that type of stuff.
Yeah. So there's a couple different points there. You had mentioned, for one, spacing out meals being something that was particularly helpful. And as you said, yeah, we have talked about that before, specifically in terms of digestion, and yeah, not constantly grazing, which one thing that can definitely do is allow enough time for our saliva to interact with our teeth. And there are a few other factors that can go on there that we'll leave to discuss another time that can help with dental health. And then the other thing you mentioned was less of the granulated sugar, which, as you also said, part of the reason why that could have been helpful is because when you're having sugar in its form in fruit, or even in maple syrup or honey, you have a lot of polyphenols and bioflavonoids in there that have antimicrobial effects and protect the sugar from being consumed by the bacteria. So that can make a big difference as well. Of course, you have nutrients there too in most of those cases, but yeah. So yeah, those are all good things to mention. A couple others I would mention as far as some real practical things. Did you want to say something?
I just want to say that the bacteria are producing acids from the sugars that they get a hold of. And the initial theory of tooth decay was sugar causes bacterial growth to produce, the bacteria produce acids, and then the acids degrade to the teeth. And it's like a much, much more complicated process than just bacteria assaulting your teeth. Like there's multiple factors, and that's why it's not a simple like, oh, one-off answer, right? Like, because you have your nutrient status, you have your own body's processes, and then you have the regulation of the bacteria in your mouth from the immune system, and then you have how that interacts with the foods that you're eating on a regular basis, and then you have the bacteria producing acids. Like there's so many different pieces to hit it at. It all comes down to diet and lifestyle manipulation, and maybe some targeted approaches, for the gut or for the mouth or whatever it is. But there's a lot more to the story than just, oh, Streptococcus mucins is just having like raging insurgency in your mouth and taking over your teeth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a lot going on. And so in talking about some other things to consider beyond having time between meals and not focusing or not getting so many carbs from granulated sugar, a couple other things that might be worth considering. One would be rinsing your mouth after meals. Another would be that when you are having something that, especially when you're already having sensitive teeth, and then if you're going to have something like juice, or if you're having something that has a decent amount of sugar in it, that is granulated sugar. If you're having soda, you can use a straw, or again, rinse after. If you're having something else with a lot of granulated sugar, you could try rinsing after. Again, this doesn't address all the different factors going on that can affect or prevent dental erosion, but can make a difference. And another treatment you could say that I've heard, I've quite a few anecdotal experiences of it being beneficial is doing oil pulling with something like coconut oil, and that can be pretty effective. There's some research looking at certain pro-metabolic supplements and anti-inflammatory supplements like aspirin being able to support or protect the teeth from erosion. So that would be something to consider in general relationships with like thyroid and dental health and those kinds of things.
Yeah, I think xylitol, like as not as something that you actually eat, but like xylitol, like a gum that's not, not bad, is it can help with the teeth because it inhibits biofilm formation. So that's like a kind of a known one. And then
Yeah.
I think, as you mentioned too, using some type of mouthwash that has like essential oils, like the older mouthwashes, I think Listerine was based off of these, was based off of having like these different essential oil compounds like menthol and salicyclate and in like like lower amounts, like not even 1-2% amounts because they're really potent.
Yeah.
So that can be helpful. I mean, Listerine burns my mouth, so I don't like it at all. But
Yeah, the original Listerine, that's like the orange yellow one, is made with essential oils, but is also a high amount of alcohol, so that's why it burns so much.
yeah, yeah, I don't think you need to have a ridiculously high amount because the alcohol is actually irritating to the mucosa.
And drying, yeah.
Yeah, you could probably make some type of coconut oil with a low amount of essential oil. Like you could take some coconut oil, put it like, heat it up a little bit, not so that you're like cooking it, but just so it's in a less solid form. And then maybe add in a couple drops of maybe oregano oil, not an amount that you burn, just the amount to emulsify in the oil. And then maybe a little olive leaf or some cinnamon and oregano, or the cinnamon lemongrass, like that might taste good actually. And then just, now you'd have like a little thing that you could oil pull with. So you'd have the coconut oil, as which has the medium chain triglycerides that have an antimicrobial effect, as well as having the actual the essential oils, which aren't damaging like the alcohol. So that's something that you could do. And then chewing xylitol gum. Although with the xylitol, I wouldn't recommend like just chewing gum all day long, because then you're constantly stimulating that digestive process. So what I would say is eat your meal and then have xylitol gum a couple minutes after, because once you have the food inside your stomach, like chewing will stimulate the digestive juices once it's actually full with that protein, especially if you set your meal up how I had it situated, where you have your juice and fruit and whatever carbs first, wait your 10 to 20 minutes, and then eat your meat and protein and have a little bit of gum, the xylitol gum when you're done. But I think the overarching big picture too is, and then obviously brushing your teeth in the morning, at night can be very helpful. But the overarching big picture is making sure that you're eating like a solid diet that's not irritating you, that's covering all your nutrient bases. Because when you think about this, like, and this is something I think that came specifically with Weston A. Price's work, is that the people in the populations he studied didn't actually have tooth decay. And that was because their diets were so nutrient dense and they were eating foods that weren't problematic. And as soon as they got vegetable oils and high granulated sugar and margarines and refined grain products and whatnot, their oral health as well as the rest of their health went to absolute crap. So a lot of it, I think the bulk of it comes down to diet. And then these other strategies can be helpful for sure. The last piece I want to talk about really quickly is, and this is like known in the paleo and the Weston A. Price Foundation sphere, but heavy grain consumption can contain things like phytic acid that has a negative effect on the mineral status in your body, as well as things like oxalic acid, which we talked about with spinach. So I would say avoiding foods that are actually like pulling minerals from your body, and then having foods that are actually adding valuable minerals to your body that you tolerate. So the most mineral dense foods that you can have is going to be your beef, your eggs, your fish, your dairy, your fruit, and and your seafood, and then any types of specific vegetables that you tolerate. Like that is the most, and then tubers, right? Well, I guess that's vegetables, but there you have your potassium, you have your sodium, you have your calcium, you have your magnesium, you have, a whole host of vitamins and minerals. Like that's the best way to get all of that stuff. And then you can fill in some of the gaps with quality supplements that you tolerate well. That's, I think, the most simplest, easiest strategy to manage any type of, pretty much most health problems in my experience. Obviously, there's some targeted stuff depending on the situation, but that's like the foundational level, I would say.
Yeah, and just to add a couple other specifics also, so you're mentioning the xylitol gum. You can get xylitol in its like pure form, and looks like sugar. You can just do a rinse with it so you're not chewing the gum as much, which I don't think it's a big deal either way, but that would be an option that you could do as well. You could, and then a couple other things I wanted to mention was one, antibiotic use being effective for tooth decay, which I think just lends support to the role of the microbiome in dental health and also the metabolic health. I mean, the role of the microbiome in metabolic health, and then the role of metabolic health in dental health. So that would be something else to consider there.